My name is Paula Rubin, and I once believed kindness always came back. I built my life on helping others, neighbors, strangers, anyone in need. And it worked. By 29, I owned shares worth over $40 million in a company that touched nearly every corner of the world. I wasn't just wealthy, I was respected, admired, even envied. Before I tell you how I got my revenge, hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. But envy has sharp teeth. Behind the shining glass walls of our headquarters, my co-owners smiled at me in boardrooms, toasted me at dinners, and called me their sister in success. I thought they were family. I thought they wanted the best for me. I was wrong. Dead wrong. Because even as I celebrated our growth, they were meeting in secret. Whispering. Plotting. Sharpening their knives. And one evening, without warning, everything I had built, everything I believed was safe, was ripped away. They didn't just steal my money. They stole my trust, my name, my future. And yet, what they never expected was that kindness, the very thing they mocked me for, would return like a blade in the dark. This is the story of how I lost everything, and how I took it back. The company wasn't just numbers on a screen, it was my dream come alive. I started as a young woman with a laptop and a restless heart. I believed people deserved better services, smoother connections, and faster solutions. With time, my idea grew into a giant, a company with offices in New York, London, Dubai, and beyond. I held $40 million worth of shares, not just paper, but proof of my sweat, my vision, my sacrifice. Yet, I never bragged. I gave bonuses to employees, paid for scholarships, even funded hospitals. My co-owners said I was too soft, but I thought kindness was strength. Still, I noticed things: board meetings without me, contracts signed behind closed doors, documents I wasn't shown. When I asked questions, they laughed it off. "You worry too much, Paula. Relax." But their laughter felt sharp, like glass under my feet. At night, I told myself I was imagining things. I wanted to believe I was safe among friends. Yet deep inside, my heart whispered, something is coming. Love revenge stories? Subscribe now. We drop new ones every week, raw, emotional, and full of justice. Don't miss the next chapter. And it was. What I didn't know then was that the people I trusted most were building a trap designed to ruin me completely. At first glance, my partners looked perfect. James wore his expensive suits like armor, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. Monica, with her calm voice, always played peacemaker, while Victor, the loudest, filled rooms with confidence that often drowned out my voice. Together, they looked like the dream team anyone would trust. But trust was the trap. They praised me in public, called me the heart of the company, yet I noticed how their eyes hardened whenever my back was turned. I was the youngest co-owner, the only one who believed people mattered more than profit. That difference grew into a silent wall between us. I remember one meeting where James slid a folder across the table. "Just sign, Paula." "It's routine," he said smoothly. But when I flipped through, most pages were missing. Monica leaned in, her smile too sweet. "Don't worry. We'll handle the details." Something inside me screamed don't. So I didn't. Their smiles cracked for just a second. That's when I realized, I wasn't sitting with partners. I was sitting with predators. And they had already begun weaving the net meant to strangle everything I had built. It started small. A contract here, a meeting there, things I wasn't invited to. "Oh, Paula, it was last minute," Victor would say, waving his hand like it was nothing. Monica sent updates that left out entire sections of deals. James grew colder, speaking for me before I could open my mouth. I brushed it off at first. Maybe I was overthinking. But then I noticed the new hires, people loyal only to them. They bypassed me, reported straight to James. Even emails with my name on them seemed to vanish. My voice, once respected, was slowly being erased. One night, I stayed late at the office. While walking past the glass conference room, I froze. There they were, James, Monica, and Victor, papers spread across the table, whispering furiously. My name was bold across several documents. I pushed the door open, pretending to need my bag. Their smiles snapped on instantly, but I caught the flicker of panic in their eyes. Late night? I asked. Routine business, James replied too quickly. Routine? No. This wasn't routine. This was a storm forming. And deep down, I knew, the people I trusted most were preparing to gut me alive. The blow came on a Tuesday morning. A man in a dark suit appeared at my office door with a stack of papers thick as a brick. "You've been served," he said flatly, leaving the documents on my desk before I could even speak. "Subscribe for more powerful revenge stories. Like, comment and share your location." I tore them open, my hands trembling. My co-owners, James, Monica, and Victor, were accusing me of negligence, of mismanagement, of putting the company at risk. Lies, every word of it. But the pages were stamped, signed, and filed. Worse, buried deep in the legal jargon was a clause I had supposedly agreed to. A clause that stripped me of my voting rights and shifted control of my $40 million shares to them. I didn't remember signing it. I wouldn't have signed it. But their forged signatures, their witnesses, their lawyers had made it look ironclad. When I called them, James answered coolly, "It's nothing personal, Paula. Business is business." Nothing personal? They had stolen my life. By the end of the week, my bank accounts were frozen. Reporters swarmed my home. My phone rang nonstop with accusations. And just like that, the empire I had built was ripped from my hands. Within days, everything collapsed. My office was locked, my company email shut down. Security guards I once greeted with smiles now turned their backs as I stood outside, humiliated. My nameplate disappeared from the boardroom door as if I'd never existed. The media painted me as reckless, greedy, and careless. Headlines screamed, "Paula Rubin under fire, $40 million dispute." Neighbors whispered when I walked by. Friends stopped answering my calls. Even relatives avoided me, afraid my downfall might stain them. Bills piled up. Creditors circled like vultures. With my accounts frozen, I couldn't even pay my staff. Some sent kind notes, but most vanished overnight. Kindness, it seemed, didn't stretch far when money was gone. One evening, I stood in my empty apartment, staring at bare walls. My art, my furniture, even family heirlooms, everything was gone, seized or sold. The silence pressed against me like a coffin. For the first time in my life, I had nothing. Not wealth. Not security. Not respect. And yet, in that crushing silence, something inside me hardened. They thought they had destroyed me. But what they didn't know was that I had lost everything before, and I had come back stronger. Loneliness is loud. It echoed through every corner of my life after the betrayal. People I once called friends no longer returned my calls. Invitations stopped. My phone, once buzzing with endless messages, sat silent on the table. Even family pulled away. My cousin muttered something about bad publicity before refusing to meet me. An aunt who once bragged about me at every party now acted as if I were a stranger. My name had turned toxic, and no one wanted the stain. I walked the city streets in worn shoes, the same sidewalks where drivers once opened doors for me. I used to dine in restaurants where waiters greeted me by name. Now I watched through the glass as others laughed over meals I couldn't afford. The betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, identity, and belonging. James, Monica, and Victor hadn't simply taken my shares. They had ripped me out of the life I'd built. And yet, in that darkness, I felt something stir. A faint memory of faces I had once helped. People who had promised, with tears in their eyes, "I'll never forget you." At the time, I thought nothing of it. But fate remembered. With nowhere else to go, I returned to the one place that still felt mine, my late father's small house on the edge of town. It was quiet, old, and far from the glass towers I once ruled. The walls smelled of dust and memories, but at least they did not judge me. Days blurred into nights. I spent hours staring at yellowed photo albums, reminding myself I once came from nothing and could survive it again. But the silence was heavy. No phones ringing, no meetings, no applause. Just me and the truth of how deeply I'd been betrayed. I began walking the narrow streets again, hood pulled low, avoiding familiar faces. People whispered, "Isn't that Paula Rubin? The one who lost it all?" I kept moving, my pride tucked away like a broken wing. Some nights, I cried. Other nights, I clenched my fists, whispering promises to myself. This is not the end. They haven't won. I thought my story had ended in ruins. But fate was waiting. Because one evening, as I sat alone on the creaking porch, I heard footsteps approach. And in that moment, the shadows began to shift. The nights in that old house were long, filled with silence broken only by the ticking clock on the mantel. To quiet my mind, I opened boxes I hadn't touched in years. Inside were letters, cards, and photos, reminders of lives I had crossed in my rise. A scholarship thank you from a young student who became a doctor. A note from a single mother whose rent I had secretly paid. A letter from a woman I barely remembered, saying my kindness saved her during her darkest hour. At the time, I never thought much of it. I helped because I could, because kindness felt right. But now, in my loneliness, their words warmed me like fragile embers in the cold. I wondered where those people were. Did they remember me? Did they even care what had become of me? One night, I whispered aloud, "If kindness really matters, let it return to me somehow." I didn't know the universe was listening. Because soon, one of those faces from my past would step out of memory and into my shattered present. And when she did, my story would change forever. It was a rainy evening when I heard the knock. Slow. Firm. Unexpected. I froze. Hardly anyone came to this forgotten house, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door a crack, ready to send them away. But instead, I saw a woman standing there, her coat dripping wet, her eyes shining with recognition. "Paula Rubin?" she asked softly. I nodded, confused. She smiled. "You don't remember me, do you?" Her face tugged at something deep in my memory, but I couldn't place it. She stepped inside, setting down an old leather bag. "Years ago, when no one else would help me, you did. You gave me food. Money. A chance to start again. You saved my life." My chest tightened. I whispered, I did?" She nodded firmly. "You did. And now, it's my turn." The room seemed to shift around me. For months, I had been sinking, drowning alone. Now, here stood a stranger, no, not a stranger, but a forgotten thread from my past, offering a lifeline. I didn't yet know her name. I didn't yet know her plan. But I knew one thing, my story was not over. She removed her coat and sat down, her presence filling the silence of the old house. At last, she spoke. "My name is Clara Dean. 15 years ago, I was homeless, desperate, and invisible. You noticed me. You gave me $50 and told me I was worth more than my failures." I sat stunned. The memory flickered back. Her frightened eyes, the trembling hands clutching that money. I never imagined she'd remember. Clara leaned closer. "That $50 saved me. I built a life. I built wealth. Today, I stand here because of you." Her words felt unreal. My children had stripped me of dignity, abandoned me, and yet this forgotten act had grown into something powerful. Clara placed a folder on the table. "I know about your children. Their greed is loud in the city. Their empire is growing, but so are their mistakes. I've been watching." She slid the folder toward me. Inside were documents, names, numbers, proof of something dark. I whispered, "Why are you showing me this?" Her voice was steady. "Because I owe you everything. And together, Paula, we can take back what they stole. Not just money, but respect." The storm outside roared. Clara's eyes locked onto mine with quiet intensity. "Paula, I don't just want to help you survive. I want to help you rise higher than before." I stared at her, torn between hope and suspicion. "You don't understand. They've ruined me. I don't even have a bank account anymore." Clara smiled faintly. "That's exactly why I'm here. I have resources, companies, networks, people who owe me favors. All of it started with your kindness. Now, I want to give it back." She pulled out a second envelope. Inside were legal blueprints, showing a plan to destabilize my children's empire without breaking the law. Every loophole, every shady deal, every hidden debt, they were all documented. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. This was more than help. It was a weapon. "What are you asking from me?" I whispered. Clara leaned forward. "Only your courage. You know them better than anyone. Their pride, their secrets, their weaknesses. With my backing and your knowledge, we can bring them to their knees." For the first time in months, I felt something stirring in my chest, hope mixed with vengeance. I whispered back, "Then let's begin." That night Clara and I worked by lamplight, quiet as thieves but steadier than thieves. She had left the folder open on the table and we read every line until the paper blurred. Hidden in a stack of shipping manifests was a tiny note, a bank transfer code and a name I recognized. It was my signature, forged and used to move money 5 times in the last year. My breath stopped. I had felt crooked deals in my bones, but proof made the world tilt. Clara pointed to an email thread she had intercepted. It named an offshore account and a firm owned by James's cousin. She had tracked payments from that firm into shell companies that funneled cash to accounts controlled by Monica and Victor. Every piece fit like a broken puzzle clicking back together. My hands shook as I typed the code into Clara's old laptop. Lines of numbers and names scrolled and a map of transactions appeared. I whispered, "They lied. They stole my shares using fake documents." Clara held my hand. "Now we have the first proof," she said. "We start here. Tomorrow we move, quiet and certain now." Morning light streamed through the blinds as Clara laid out the next set of files. "They thought they covered their tracks," she said, "but greed always leaves footprints." I leaned closer. The papers revealed a hidden trail of shell companies, each one siphoning a piece of my $40 million. What stunned me most was the arrogance. They hadn't even tried to hide their names from the paperwork. Victor's bold signature was on 3 contracts. Monica's handwriting appeared in a note approving a fraudulent transfer. And James? His arrogance showed in an email bragging about securing everything before she notices. The anger inside me simmered into something colder, sharper. Clara tapped her finger on one paper. "If we follow this trail, we'll find the master account. From there, we can unravel it all." I asked softly, "And then?" Her lips curved into a thin smile. "Then we make them answer for every stolen dollar." For the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. My children had underestimated me, but I had something stronger than their stolen wealth. I had truth, strategy, and an ally who refused to let me fall. Tomorrow, we would dig deeper. Clara and I knew we couldn't rush. Revenge wasn't about rage, it was about patience. If we struck too soon, they'd bury the money even deeper. So, we decided to set a trap. Clara explained the plan. "We'll bait them with something they can't resist, a new deal, too good to ignore. They'll expose their greed, and we'll be waiting." I nodded slowly. "But they don't trust me anymore. They'll never believe I'm capable of anything." "That's exactly why it'll work," Clara replied. We forged documents suggesting I still had access to an old international contact who could open doors to a lucrative investment. Clara arranged for a shell company to pose as the opportunity. My children thought I was broken, powerless, a woman clinging to scraps. When the fake deal crossed their desks, I could almost hear their laughter. They would think they were outsmarting me again. But this time, every signature, every false move, every greedy transfer would be recorded. Clara had the surveillance, the legal framework, and the reach. I whispered to myself, if they take the bait, their empire begins to crumble. The first chess piece was finally in place. The bait worked faster than I dared hope. I sent the forged proposal through the shell firm. Within 48 hours, notices appeared on their private server. James forwarded it to Victor with a hungry message. Monica scheduled a private meeting and invited the three of them. I watched as they whispered about terms that would give them control over overseas holdings. They treated the fake opportunity like candy, eager and careless. Clara and I sat in a rented office 2 blocks away with headphones and small recorder. Every spoken promise, every offhand insult, every mention of accounts and code names fed our case. They bragged about moving funds and hiding paper trails. Victor joked about a trusted lawyer who would make it disappear. James laughed and said he had signatures ready. My hands were steady as I listened. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. This was the moment we needed. Clara tapped the recorder and sent a copy to an investigative journalist she trusted. We did not want revenge that only punished us. We wanted proof that would free me and lock them out. When the meeting ended, they left smiling. I felt the net tighten around them. By the next morning, Clara's journalist contact had sent back one clear message: this is gold, but too early. Let them dig deeper. So, we waited. The recording spread quietly through Clara's network of allies. Lawyers, analysts, and even a retired judge listened, each confirming the same truth: my children were guilty of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The weight of their crimes was undeniable. At night, I lay awake replaying their words in my mind. She'll never see it coming. It's all ours now. Their voices, once my children's, sounded like strangers wearing their faces. Clara sat with me. This is more than revenge, Paula. This is justice. But you must stay patient. Greed always overreaches. She was right. 2 days later, Victor made a bold move. He redirected funds from the fake deal into one of their real accounts, unaware the transfer was traced. Each careless decision stacked higher, building the tower that would one day collapse. As I watched the paper trail grow, I whispered, they thought I was powerless. They don't know I'm watching. The silence in the room was thick, but for the first time, I felt power return. The cracks began small, like hairline fractures in glass. Monica's personal assistant leaked whispers to a competitor about late payments. Victor's investors grew restless after 2 delayed dividends. James tried to mask the losses with bold speeches, but doubt seeped in. Clara and I tracked every slip. They're juggling too much, she said, pointing to the charts. Their empire looks strong from the outside, but inside it's hollow. One night, we watched a news segment exposing inconsistencies in their company's quarterly report. Clara's journalist contact had planted it perfectly, vague enough to raise suspicion without revealing our hand. Stocks dipped slightly, enough to rattle them. By morning, their lawyers scrambled, issuing statements of stability. But investors weren't convinced. My children began turning on each other. I could see it in their leaked emails. Monica blamed Victor for weak management. Victor accused James of arrogance. James dismissed them both. I sipped tea, calm for the first time in months. They're eating themselves alive, I whispered. Clara smiled. Let them fight. The more noise they make, the easier it will be to strike. For the first time, revenge didn't feel distant, it felt inevitable. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday. Clara rushed into our safe office with a folder so thick it nearly burst. Paula, she said breathlessly, we have them. Inside were bank records showing how Victor had funneled millions from the fake deal into a Cayman account, thinking it hidden. Clara's tech ally traced every dollar, linking it back to forged signatures, mine included. The evidence was undeniable. I stared at the pages, my hands trembling. This proves everything. Clara nodded. It's more than proof. It's leverage. They're already cracking. If we release this strategically, the entire house will fall. We debated our options: go directly to authorities or let the press strike first. Clara suggested both. The law brings punishment, the press brings shame. Together, they won't recover. That night, I stood by the window, watching rain carve rivers on the glass. I thought about the years I had poured into building that company, into raising children who no longer saw me as family. And now, justice was within reach. I whispered into the storm, tomorrow, they learn what it means to betray me. The air shifted. The hunt was no longer silent, it was war. Clara's plan unfolded at dawn. The journalist released a carefully crafted article, Whispers of Fraud Inside a Global Empire. It didn't mention names directly, but the details were sharp enough for insiders to know. Investors panicked. Stock dipped again, deeper this time. By mid-morning, regulators announced an inquiry. My children scrambled like ants in the rain. James called an emergency meeting, Monica issued a defensive press release, and Victor tried to reassure their partners. But every word sounded hollow. Clara watched the news beside me, her arms crossed. That's the first blow. They'll deny, they'll twist, but the seed of doubt has been planted. I sat still, sipping coffee slowly, savoring the chaos from afar. Their empire, once untouchable, was showing cracks for the world to see. And none of them suspected the mother they betrayed was the architect of their downfall. That evening, leaked audio clips. Our recordings surfaced online. Investors and analysts demanded answers. I imagined their faces as they realized private conversations had gone public. For the first time since losing everything, I smiled without pain. The war had begun, and the first shot had landed clean. The fallout spread like wildfire. By sunrise, headlines screamed across every major outlet, insiders accused of fraud, millions in question. Stockholders demanded meetings. Reporters camped outside company headquarters. The once glorious name of their empire now carried the stench of scandal. Victor's temper flared in leaked footage. He stormed out of a boardroom, shouting about betrayal. Monica tried to project calm, but her voice cracked during a press call. James, once so arrogant, looked pale and cornered as cameras followed his every step. Clara leaned toward me, her eyes glinting. They're spiraling. The pressure will make them reckless. That's when we strike again. I nodded, my chest swelling with something I hadn't felt in months: control. For so long, they stripped me of power, laughed at my ruin. But now, I was the shadow pulling every string. Late that night, Clara handed me another file. Tomorrow, we give the authorities the real documents. The press was only the opening act. Now comes the law. I touched the folder, heavy with evidence of forgery and theft. My hands no longer shook. They thought I was powerless, I whispered. But their empire trembles because of me. The next morning, Clara and I walked into a government office carrying the thick folder. My heart pounded, but my steps were steady. The investigator greeted us with polite suspicion, until Clara laid the documents on his desk. Bank transfers. Forged signatures. Offshore accounts. Each page tightened the noose. The investigator's eyes widened. This is serious. If these are verified, your children could face years in prison. I swallowed hard. They took $40 million from me. But more than that, they erased me. I want justice. He nodded. You'll have it. We'll begin immediately. By evening, subpoenas were issued. Quiet whispers spread across financial circles. Regulators were moving in. Board members began distancing themselves from James, Monica, and Victor. Their allies vanished overnight, each trying to save their own skin. Clara turned to me. This is the strike that cripples them. From here, everything they built will unravel. I felt no guilt, no hesitation. They had chosen greed over blood, betrayal over loyalty. Now, the law carried the sword I once thought too heavy to lift. I whispered, almost to myself, let them taste the justice they thought I'd never claim. It began with sirens. Early one morning, federal agents stormed into the glass towers my children called their empire. Cameras caught the chaos, employees watching as James, Monica, and Victor were escorted out in handcuffs. Their faces, once arrogant and untouchable, were pale with fear. News anchors called it the downfall of a dynasty. Investors pulled out in waves. Stock prices collapsed. Board members resigned, some even offering testimony to save themselves. The empire they had stolen from me crumbled in a matter of days. I watched it all from Clara's office. My heart was steady, my hands calm. For months I had been a ghost, silenced and forgotten. Now the world saw the truth. Monica broke first. Reports revealed she confessed to avoid a harsher sentence. Victor tried to fight, but every paper trail led back to him. And James, the ringleader, sat hollow-eyed in the courtroom, unable to spin another lie. Clara touched my shoulder. "This is your justice." I whispered, "No, this is their ruin. My justice is yet to come." Because money could be recovered, reputations destroyed, but I still had one final move to play. With their empire gone, I finally stood free of their shadow. Reporters tried to reach me, curious about the mother behind the scandal, but I stayed silent. My silence was power. Clara and I met with the investigators again. They confirmed what I longed to hear: restitution. The courts would order the stolen assets returned. My $40 million, once buried in offshore webs, was finally making its way back. But money was only part of it. What I truly regained was dignity. The same family who had cast me aside now sat disgraced, their names tarnished. I, the woman they tried to erase, was respected again. Clara raised a glass of wine one evening. "Paula, you've not just survived, you've risen." I smiled, a real smile this time. "Because of you. Because kindness circles back, even when you've forgotten it." The world now looked different. Opportunities returned, doors opened, and people remembered my name not as a victim, but as a woman who refused to stay broken. Still, one final step remained. Justice had spoken, revenge had struck, but I knew the end was not only about them, it was about me reclaiming my story. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the final ruling. My children, James, Monica, and Victor, sat pale, defeated, shadows of the people they once were. Years of prison, restitution of my $40 million, and permanent bans from holding executive positions. Their empire was gone, their pride shattered. As the gavel struck, I felt no triumph in their ruin, only closure. They had stolen not just my wealth, but my dignity. Today, I reclaimed both. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters begged for a statement. I looked straight into the lenses, my voice calm, steady. They tried to erase me. But I am still here. Stronger than before. And this time, no one will silence me. Clara stood beside me, smiling quietly. The woman I once helped when she was broken had returned the gift tenfold. That night, I returned home, not to the ruins of betrayal, but to a new beginning. I poured a glass of wine, stared out at the city lights, and whispered to myself. This was never just about money. It was about respect. About truth. And about remembering who I am. For the first time in years, peace filled me. Revenge was complete. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.